So now it's my great pleasure to introduce our last plenary speaker of the morning, Stanislav Grof, and whose reputation precedes him. He'll be doing a plenary session on psychedelics and the future of humanity. And then after our break, we'll take a somewhat truncated break because we're running a bit behind. He'll be doing in the clinical track here a talk on the implications of consciousness research for psychiatry, psychology, and psychotherapy. So I have to admit that I was asked to pare the bios down to just a few sentences. I refused. And you'll see why in a second. Stanislav Grof, MD, is a psychiatrist with over 60 years of research experience in non-ordinary states of consciousness and one of the founders and chief theoreticians of transpersonal psychology. He was born in Prague, Czechoslovakia, where he also received his scientific training, an MD degree from the Charles University School of Medicine and a Doctor of Philosophy degree in medicine from the Czechoslovakian Academy of Sciences. Dr. Grof's early research in the clinical uses of psychedelic substances was conducted at the Psychiatric Research Institute in Prague, where he conducted thousands, almost 10,000, I think, psychedelic sessions over a number of years. He was principal investigator of a program that systematically explored the heuristic and therapeutic potential of LSD and other psychedelic substances. In 1967, he was invited as clinical and research fellow to the Johns Hopkins University and the research unit of Spring Grove Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. Interesting how Johns Hopkins was the last man standing in the 60s and one of the first and biggest research facilities now. And the research unit of Spring Grove's Hospital at Baltimore. In 1969, he became an assistant professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University and continued his research as chief of psychiatric research at the Maryland Psychiatric Research Institute. In 1973, Dr. Grof was invited to the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, where he developed, with his late wife, Christina Grof, holotropic breathwork, an innovative form of experimental psychotherapy, developed in part due to the changed legal status of LSD. And that is now being used worldwide. Dr. Grof is the founder of the International Transpersonal Association. You see why I couldn't cut this down. And for several decades served as its president. In 1993, he received an honorary degree from the Association for Transpersonal Psychology for major contributions to and development of the field of transpersonal psychology, excuse me, given on the occasion of the 25th anniversary, their 25th anniversary convocation. In 2007, he received the prestigious Vision 97 Lifetime Achievement Award from the foundation of Dagmar and Balasev Havel in Prague, Czechoslovakia, and has received numerous other awards for his pivotal contributions to the field. Among Dr. Grof's publications are over 150 articles in professional journals and the books LSD, Gateway to the Numinous, Beyond the Brain, LSD Psychotherapy, The Cosmic Game, Psychology of the Future, The Ultimate Journey, several others, and these three, Modern Consciousness Research and the Understanding of Art, The Stormy Search for the Self, and Spiritual Emergence in Holotropic Breathwork, the last three of which were written with his late wife, Christina. These books have been translated into 23 languages. As a psychologist, I want to just say that Dr. Grof has been a bit of a hero of mine and the most well-known psychological, psychiatric voice over the decades in this field. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce him and to turn him over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Before I start talking, I would like to thank Rick Dublin and MAPS for this incredible work in the last 4 decades, moving from a situation where it was virtually impossible to do psychedelic research to this unbelievable global renaissance that's happening. And I don't know how you did it, you and your staff, but it's just unbelievably impressive. So Rick asked me to use about half an hour this morning to talk about the potential of psychedelics, not just from an individual perspective, but also from a global perspective. So if we look at human history, we see two very powerful forces driving it. One is insatiable greed, acquisitiveness, and the other one is unbridled aggression. And this has been happening since the shift from the hunters and gatherers to the development of cities and agriculture, where there was possible to accumulate possessions. So this has been there through centuries. Now, in the 20th century and the 21st century, these forces became really dangerous. In the past, they certainly were destructive for the human groups that was involved, but it was not damaging the planet. But what happened in the last 100 years with the incredible population explosion, with the escalation of industrial productivity, the unbelievable pollution that's happening, the increase of violence on a global scale. So we are now facing a situation where the survival of the human species is really threatened, and very likely we would take a few other species with us. So the question is there anything we can do about it? What has been done so far, the military interventions, the economic sanctions, diplomatic, political sanctions, if anything, have created more problems than they solved. And the famous statement by Albert Einstein is, you cannot solve the problems using the same type of thinking that got you into the trouble in the first place. It requires some kind of radically different approach. So the question is, what can we do? I think people in transpersonal circles see that we are facing a global crisis, but which has many symptoms, but ultimately there is a common denominator to all of them, which is the state of evolution of the human species. If we were sort of different kind of species, if we had hearts and heads in a different place, we could solve the problems in the world. There's enough resources, there is enough know-how. So the question is how we use these resources. Now, if you look at spiritual history, then many of the spiritual teachers agree that you cannot sort of reach inner peace, you cannot reach happiness by acquisition of some external material means. It's property, money, power, fame, state. It requires something else. It requires a profound transformation of consciousness. So the question is, what kind of transformation would it be? How could it be achieved? So I would like to talk about the experiences I have had, the changes that I've seen over the last 60 years in people who were involved in responsible use, experimentation with psychedelics. Now, talking about it, I use a very famous Tibetan tanka, which summarizes somehow the basic ideas of Mahayana Buddhism in Tibet. Now, this is a tanka that is showing the wheel of life, which is held in grip by the Lord of Death. The circle in the middle is divided into 6 segments. These are called lokas. These are the areas into which supposedly can be reborn after death. But they also are areas which we can experience in systematic spiritual practice. And they're also an archetypal domains that then get projected into the world. So if we go to the top, we see the realm of devas, devaloka, gods. Then if we go clockwise, this is the realm of asuras, or jealous gods, who are in constant fight with the gods, like what we see in Greece, the Titans against the Olympic gods and so on. And then the next one is a great realm, which is the realm of the pretas. They're called hungry ghosts. They are very pitiful creatures with big bellies and tiny mouth, which is the size of a pinhead. So they can never get enough. So to a great extent, this is archetype running the industrial civilization now, among others. Then if we go further down, this is the realm of hell, Naraloka, which also has the scene of judgment. I will not talk about the details about it because I want to get to the center. So the next one, if we go, this is the realm of animals, of wild beasts, a realm that's governed by very base instincts. And then the next one, like 11 o'clock, is the Manakaloka, which is the human realm, where you supposedly have the best chances for enlightenment. You have the necessary resources. Now, in the middle of the circle, we can see three animals. This is a pig, the snake, and a rooster. And they represent what in Tibetan Buddhism is called the three poisons. These are the three forces that supposedly keep us on the wheel of rebirth and are causes of all suffering in the world. So the pig represents ignorance, avidya. The snake represents aggression, violence. And the rooster represents desire, lust, that leads then to attachment. Okay. So those are the three Tibetan poisons. Now in Hinayana Buddhism, which is the Buddhism of the small vehicle, the original teaching of the Buddha, the idea was as long as you are in what's called samsaric world, you're incarnate, you will be suffering. And the initial idea was you want to get completely off the wheel. You have to get into the realm which is beyond creation, which is nirvana. This term nirvana is related to the Sanskrit vata, which means wind. So what it means is evanescence, extinguishing of the torches of light, moving into realm beyond existence. Now then, during the history of Buddhism, a different form developed, which is called Mahayana, the large vehicle, Buddhism of the large vehicle, where the idea was different. The idea was that you can move in the direction of liberation, of nirvana, to the extent to which you can reduce the impact of these three forces in your life. Ignorance, violence, anger, aggression, and desire, and this insatiable desire. Okay, so I'd like to talk about how responsible use of psychedelic can help us to reduce the three forces that are seen as really the main sources of suffering in the world. So if you look at the pig, which is ignorance, so when we use, again, systematically, responsibly psychedelics, we get a lot of new information. We can, for example, get access to repressed and forgotten material from our childhood, the things that happen in infancy, childhood, that make our life difficult. We can, something that's not accepted in current psychology, psychiatry, we can actually relive our birth. We can decide how much suffering in our life is determined by the fact that we carry unprocessed memory of birth with all the difficult emotions and the difficult physical energies which are blocked in the body. We can even find the prenatal causes of difficulties that we have. And we can not only discover them, but we can go there, we can bring them into consciousness, we can process now the emotions, we can free ourselves from that powerful negative program, which is perinatal, prenatal, and postnatal. But it goes beyond this. There's a category of experiences that we call transpersonal, when we can have experiential identification with other people, actually members of other species, even in the botanical realm. We can discover a lot of things, sort of information that goes way beyond anything that we know intellectually. We can identify with different animals, and we can, by becoming them, we can get deep understanding what their experience of the world is. Now, avidya, that term which is used in the Buddhist tradition, does not mean ignorance in terms of having a lack of information about the material world. The term avidya ultimately is about something else, which is our lack of understanding of the nature of reality and lack of understanding of who we really are. This is a knowledge that has nothing to do with concrete knowledge, information about the material world. It has to do with the fact that there are normally invisible or imperceptible dimensions of reality that play extremely important role in the life that we are leading. We are not aware that those dimensions exist. We also can discover very different information about the nature of ourselves, who we are. Are we really just Newtonian objects? Are we really just body egos, or are we something much larger? So this is the kind of knowledge that can counteract the avidya, this fundamental ignorance about the nature of reality and who we are. And this is something that becomes available in psychedelic experiences, or the whole category of experiences which I call holotropic, means that help us to move towards wholeness. Holos means whole, and trepein means moving toward wholeness. So what's behind it is the idea that ultimately each of us carries kind of a spark of cosmic creative energy, which in Hinduism is called Atman, and that we can reach that in systematic self-exploration. In Hinduism, of course, it's using the different yogas, but psychedelics certainly are a means to achieve that. So we can experience and empirically validate the fact that our deepest nature is not nama rupa, name and shape, but Atman, this core of cosmic energy. And when we experience it, we realize that that energy is identical with the energy that created the universe, which is then called Brahman. We are not nama rupa, we are not body egos, we are ultimately Atman, Brahman, and that knowledge is not available and becomes available in the work with non-ordinary states of consciousness. I wanted to tell a story about Jack Kornfield. One of the things in Buddhism is there's no separate self. A lot of the suffering in the world is that we identify with sort of autonomous, separate self. And Jack Kornfield tells a story when he met Kalu Rinpoche as a very eager student of Buddhism and wanted to use that opportunity. So he asked Kalu Rinpoche, can you just in a few words tell me what is the essence of Buddhism? And Kalu Rinpoche says, well, I could tell you, but you wouldn't believe me, and it would take you a very long time to understand what I mean. And Jack said, please tell me anyway. And Kalu Rinpoche said, okay, you don't really exist. Which means not you don't exist, something exists, but it's not what you think it is. It's not the body ego. So this is the kind of knowledge that we get that counteracts the avidya, and this is called prajna paramita, transcendental wisdom. Now, if we look at the second poison, which is aggression, again, any of you who have done psychedelics know that we can process a lot of aggression. We see it also in the holotropic breathwork. So there's aggression which is associated with traumatic postnatal history, there's enormous amount of aggression that is stored from the time of birth. All the response, aggressive response to the hours of suffocation and the passage through the birth canal. There is anger that might be associated with prenatal trauma. And then we find also transpersonal sources of aggression in this kind of exploration. One of them being past life experiences, karmic experiences. We can also get in touch with archetypes that are aggressive archetypes. You know that the archetypal realm is dichotomized. There are these dark deities, light deities. There are also grand archetypal scenes like apocalypse, you know, Ragnarok, the doom of the gods, and so on. So enormous amount of aggression on all those levels: postnatal, perinatal, prenatal, and transpersonal. None of it is really available for processing if we use verbal psychotherapy. Once we get to pre-verbal, and from then on, this cannot be handled by talking. The powerful experiential methods are the only way of addressing that. And we see enormous amount of aggression that becomes available and can be processed with the proper support in psychedelic sessions. So that you can see people really becoming much more peaceful, developing a sense of compassion and sense of connection with the world, appreciation for the world, and so on. So that is a great potential of psychedelics to really get rid of these pockets of aggression that we carry in the unconscious. Then we get to the next one, which is what's symbolized by the rooster, which is this endless acquisitiveness and greed and sort of desire to have more. And this is something that's very typical for an average person who hasn't done some significant inner work, that we always want more than we have. Things are never sort of good enough. We don't look good enough. We don't have enough possessions, enough money. We don't have enough power. We don't have enough status. And this is something that cannot be solved by more acquisitions. We see people who have, billions of dollars of everything that we think would make us happy, but they are not exactly levitating in bliss. And we don't learn. We think that if, it would not happen to us if we can improve our economic status, that the life would actually change. So the question is, where does this drive come from? So one of the things that we discover is the fact that we carry undigested, unprocessed memory of birth. So on some level, we still live in the birth canal. We were born anatomically. We got out of it, but we have not really processed the hours of pain and fear that we experience in the birth canal. So we see, for example, even in the breath work, not just psychedelics, you can breathe faster for half an hour, and you find yourself in the birth canal instead of in the room where you are doing the breath work. So if it becomes so easily available, like in everyday life, then the question is to what extent it's actually coloring our quality of life, to what extent, to some extent, we have not really stepped out, we have not accepted the fact that we are already in the world. So that's one of the major patterns, that sense of dissatisfaction, and then the feeling that something better is in the future, is the pattern, unfinished pattern of birth. If we are in the birth canal, things are not great. You see, you want to get to some better situation in the future, and you already have the memory that it happened. You got out of the birth canal, but we still carry all the memories. The little crying that happens when we are born is trivial as compared to what it would require to really process all the pent-up emotions and the physical energies that are blocked from that type. So this creates that kind of a drive that we don't, we are not satisfied with how things are. We create an image of some better future when we have more money, when we have a bigger car, you know, a bigger house, when we have more power, when we have more fame, and so on. And this is a loser's pattern. Whether we are achieving it or not, it doesn't really do anything psychologically. So you would project somehow the future goal that would bring the correction, some kind of image of what I need to really feel happy, and then we set our life on a kind of linear pursuit towards that goal. And then there are two possibilities: we don't achieve the goal, and then we feel that the reason why we don't feel happy is because we haven't achieved the correction. And the other one, we achieve it, and then we wake up in the morning and the old world is still there. So we don't say, this is a loser strategy, I have to do something significantly different. We say that the goal was not big enough. It's not 100,000, it's $1 million. Or it's not one doctorate, it's two doctorates that we need, and so on. So this is what Joseph Campbell called getting to the top of the ladder and finding that it was against the wrong wall. Okay. So the people who relive birth, who get a sense of what a powerful, irrational program it is in our lives, they start seeing retrospectively their life as what they talk about as a rat race or a treadmill kind of lifestyle, like the hamster who was in this circle, sort of running and not getting anywhere, always sort of pursuing something to the future. So this gets significantly reduced when we can relive this driving force that's associated with the unfinished business of birth, but not completely. There's still enough of the ego drive left. And so the question, where is that coming from? Ken Wilber wrote a book, The Sociable God, an Atman project, when he talks about the fact that, according to perennial philosophy, our true identity is with Atman, Atman Brahman. It's not the body ego. So when we are incarnate, we lost that sense of who we are, but we are left with some kind of a vague feeling that we should be something much, much bigger. And there's no way we can achieve that when we are incarnate in the material world. We would have to be it all, we would have to have it all to really reach our true status, cosmic status. So the only solution then is to actually experience one's own divinity and then the real nature of reality, and then we can return to whatever role we are playing in this life. But we have this larger meta framework. We know that we are something much, much larger. And it's not just a vague feeling that we should have more and we should be more, but we have experienced that sense of identity, who we are. So it becomes like a meta framework that helps us to deal with life. Okay, so I have just a list of things that I have seen in people who have done responsible work with psychedelics. So the most relevant thing for me, because I started as a clinical psychiatrist, is what you can do with psychedelics therapeutically. And we can certainly go way beyond any potential of means that we have already available, like verbal therapy, or certainly not tranquilizers. A lot of current psychiatry is limited to suppressing symptoms, and it's called therapy, where it's nothing else but mitigation of symptoms. It doesn't change really anything. Where psychedelics can take us to the core, where the problems are coming from. We can really resolve something. So this is a whole big category. Rick talked about it, and we've written about it for years. There is an enormous therapeutic potential if psychedelics are used properly. Then I already talked about significant decrease of aggression, and you see emergence of compassion in people. People feel connected with other people, feel connected with the world. When we read about industrial civilization, one word that comes again and again is alienation. We are alienated from our bodies, we are alienated from each other, we are alienated from nature, we are alienated from the cosmos, we are alienated from the spiritual. So one of the things that happen is sense of connectedness. Victor Turner, who's an English anthropologist, studied the ritual life of native cultures, and his conclusion was that experiencing together non-ordinary states of consciousness, which is always happening in these rituals, creates a sense of communitas, community. You feel bonded, you feel connected. So we see in the holotropic breathwork, people come for a weekend workshop, they have never seen each other, and when they are leaving, they feel really connected by having done this deep work with each other. We have done this as pre-conference workshops in transpersonal conferences, and we had groups of people coming from cultures that have had grudges with each other. In Europe, we had sort of all the Eastern European people and the Russians, and we had Jews and Germans and so on. And, all these different cultures have major grudges, and you can see how these boundaries, how they are melted when people really do some kind of responsible, honest work with each other. So then another one is tremendous development of racial, sexual, political, and religious tolerance. The other one is greater sense of inner peace, increase of self-image, self-acceptance. What Maslow called self-realization, self-actualization, being guided more by what he calls meta-motivations, meta-values, discovering real sense for beauty, real sense for justice. The next one, this reduction of these irrational drives and ambitions, and appreciation, much more appreciation of the present moment. Not to be more aware of what we don't have, but more what we can do with what we have. The sense of competitiveness is replaced by a sense of synergy, of cooperation. What the Taoists call the Wu Wei, which is usually translated as creative quietude, different kind of a strategy life when you don't pursue a linear goal, but more sort of go with where the energies are going, and things that you achieve are achieved with less effort, and usually in a way that also serves a larger purpose, not just the individual purpose. Something that was important with the work with cancer patients, the shift of emphasis from preoccupation with the past and concerns about the future, focus on the present moment. How am I doing today? I'm okay. Tomorrow is going to be another day, rather than imagining the horrible things that will happen in the future. The same in working with addicts or alcoholics, that being in the present is, as people know, in the AA, the emphasis is on the present moment. Can I stay sober today? Okay, I can. And tomorrow is going to be another day. Not thinking about how you relapse in the future. Increase of zest that people describe. More joie de vivre. They develop a new way of appreciating food, appreciating music, appreciating lovemaking, appreciating nature, and so on. This is very, very characteristic for responsible use with psychedelics. Another very important thing by having transpersonal experiences, feeling oneness with other forms of life and other people and so on, tremendous ecological awareness and wanting to do something for clean air, clean water, clean earth. You don't have to teach people ecology, that just comes spontaneously from transpersonal experiences. Also, sense of planetary belonging. This is something that happened also to astronauts, those people who had the possibility of seeing it's called the blue planet, you know, the one beautiful planet against the darkness and immense dimensions of the cosmic space. They just developed tremendous sense of planetary belonging. They're global citizens. When they came back, they felt it more important that they are citizens of the planet than that they are Americans or Czechs or Russians. Also, people discover, you know, what Buckminster Fuller was calling the spaceship Earth. And the last thing I would like to mention is a form of spirituality that develops as a result of responsible work with psychedelics, which is non-sectarian, non-chauvinistic, which is universal, which is all-encompassing, which is very different from what you see in relation to organized religions. Joseph Campbell used to say that the useful deity has to be transparent for the transcendent. It points to the absolute, but it's not absolute itself. He says when you make the archetypes, the images opaque, then you create a situation where you bring together a group of people who are seeing it the same way, are willing to worship a certain way, but you also divide the world because you set that group against another group. We are Christians, you know, you are pagans. Everybody has to be a Christian. We have to convert you, or, you know, there's no place for you. We are Muslims, you are infidels, so let's do, you know, sacred war against the infidels. You know, we are Jews and you are Goyim, and so on. So the religion, organized religion today, is more of a problem in the world than part of the solution. A lot of the violence comes really from the religious differences, and not just between organized religions, but also inside. You know, centuries of fight between Protestants and Catholics, centuries of fight between the Sunnis and the Shiites. So that's not a very useful religion. Religion is supposed to bind together, religio binding together what was fragmented. And this is the kind of spirituality that emerges spontaneously, people who do some responsible work with psychedelics. So I think I will end here. I've used my time. This is a big topic, and not really enough time to cover all these things. But just to sum it up in a few sentences, responsible use for psychedelics can really solve a lot of individual problems, can improve the quality of life in individuals. And I believe that the kind of transformation that I described that happens, if it could happen on a large scale, I think it would increase our capacity for survival. I have seen it in hundreds of people individually. Now, whether we can do it on a large enough scale and whether we have enough time to do it, you know, it's an open question. But it's very exciting to know that there is a way, then if we sort of agree and if we try to put our energy there, that it could really make a difference. Probably the only thing that would make a difference. you know, because if we continue the current corrective measures, I think we just make things worse. So thank you very much for your attention. And